We still do 7 NUFC Matters show a week for free. But if you want to help support NUFC Matters, then there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast and video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications bell so you don't miss a single show. If you want to help us financially, then you can join the channel using this button with the membership starting at $1.99 a month. Or you can drop us a donation in the chat using a super sticker. We're also looking for sponsors. If you'd like your brand advertised on the flyers for the show and featured during the ad break, then email John at nufcmatters.com to arrange today. Good morning, welcome to NUFC Matters. It's the Super Matt and GIBBO show, but just GIBBO this week. We do give the lads a little bit of time off over the summer so they can recharge their batteries, ready for the new season. Morning, GIBBO.
Good morning, my friend. How are you?
I'm very good. I've built this as a transfer show today because lots to talk about, I guess, with regards to potential transfers. And the big one that we were talking about last night with Ben Jacobs was the Isak story that Craig Hope had put out there. And sources close to Newcastle confirming that there had been an inquiry by Chelsea for Alexander Isak's services. And look, people can inquire all they want, but for me, as Trulls says in the chat, who's just taken up another membership at 31 months, thanks Trulls, Isak and Bruno are going nowhere, in my opinion. But yeah, people can inquire, GIBBO. They're going to have to spend a lot of money to get Isak, if anybody was thinking about doing it. And I think with the current PSR situation for most clubs, no one's got the money to do that.
Yeah, I mean, we would be slightly disappointed if people weren't inquiring about them, because you've got good players when people inquire about them. And the natural thing is that if you've got a centre forward that scores 25 goals and you're not in Europe that coming season, the clubs will try their luck at trying to get hold of these players. But I mean, I'm pretty cool about Isak in exactly the same way as I was pretty cool about Bruno. I don't think either's going anywhere. We found out about Bruno that nobody was going to trigger the figure before the deadline, which is now passed. That doesn't mean that somebody couldn't come in and bid 60 million or 70 million for Bruno and tempt Newcastle that way. But Newcastle Newcastle know exactly what they're about. They're finding it hard with the financial fair play. Naturally, aren't we all frustrated by it and annoyed and irritated by it? But they have no intention of selling Bruno, nor have they any intention of selling Isak. And what is good there for me, Steve, is that neither player is aggravating to get away. We would have problems if they were wanting to get away. If they looked at the situation and said, not in Europe, etc., we look to get away, we would have problems then. But neither are, and that is a strong position to be fighting from, because you don't have to do it. And I'm quite happy that Isak, and quite certain that Isak will stay with us. Of course, we've got to keep growing and getting better and making you this coming season to make certain the same doesn't happen in 12 months' time. But I think Isak stays with us. I think Bruno stays with us. I think Anthony Gordon stays with us. It's then a matter of who can we cash in on, because we're going to have to do that, and we will do that, preferably before June the 30th, which is, at least for one of them, which is Sunday, and that one we expect to be Minter. Wilson also comes into the frame. Because simply we can't unload Almiron or Dubrovka or Trippier, all three of whom I think would be considered, but they're away with the Euros and the Copa America. So, it can't be done there because it can't be done quickly. And Almiron's very reluctant to go. I think perhaps others would contemplate or consider it. But no, I'm quite comfortable with Isak. I think he will be ours and he will lead the line against Southampton on the opening day.
Yeah, I would agree, John. No doubt in my mind. We do get a lot of questions coming either from X or Facebook. Don't forget, if you want to join our Facebook group, just search NUFC Matters. Same with the page, search NUFC Matters, and you can hit the join button. We've also got a Supermac and GIBBO Facebook page up there, which promotes the events that the guys have been doing over the years. So search Supermac and GIBBO on Facebook and join that page as well. Asset Vigilante sent me a message on X last night for John, and he said he's got a few questions, so I don't mind going through them. He says, my questions would be, John, what do you think Howe's transfer policy is this summer, and what do you think his inner circle's transfer policy is this summer? And when he says inner circle, I guess he means Darren Eales, Steve Nixon, Amanda Staveley.
Yeah, I understand that completely. I mean, if you remember, if you go back to the closure of last season, Steve, Eddie Howe said we'd have to be cute in this transfer window because it's not straightforward. However much we are annoyed by it, financial fair play, which I think is an absolute utter disgrace, means that we can't do what we want to do. I mean, the rule, for example, without boring us with too many politics, the rule at the moment is that a club is only allowed a loss of 105 million over 3 years. And if you're getting near to breaking that figure, you've got to try to sell somebody before June the 30th. Otherwise, you're running the risk of points deductions. Now, first and foremost, I would say that figure is ludicrous because that figure was set, Steve, in 2013. The figure of 105 million loss over 3 years was set in 2013. The whole landscape, financial landscape, has changed since then. It's over a decade ago, and the figure has never changed. Very least, that figure ought to be increased because of inflation, because of everything that's happened. And it has been suggested by a financial whiz kid who I know and knows these things much better than me. The reality is that figure should be about 218 million. Now, if it was that, Newcastle wouldn't have a problem right now. But at 105 over 3 years, they have a problem. So everything that Eddie Howe wants to do, and in an ideal world, that's a centre forward, a right winger, a right-sided centre half, and probably a midfielder. That's what he would do. It's not as simple as that now because he cannot do that, and he accepts he can't do that unless he gets people out. Hence the reason they're willing to sacrifice Minter, and Howe is willing to sacrifice Callum Wilson, who we would not particularly want to go if he could keep him. But he realizes that people's got to go. Hence the stupidity over Minter, where we buy him for 6 million a year ago, and nobody's seen him yet. They haven't seen either of him. I mean, we've seen more of Shergar with Lord Lucan on his back going down Northumberland Street. I mean, it is absolutely blatant crazy, but we're going to sell him. And that is only because we've got to sell somebody. And who can we sell? Who's available? Who might go? So, I mean, I think the huge priority is a right winger, as far as Eddie's concerned. Uh, and then a centre forward, because especially if we get Wilson out the door, and we're quite happy to do that, we must get a centre forward in, and a right-sided centre half. Although the interesting thing with that, and of course we had that covered with Tossin, which would have been wonderful because we would have got two defenders without any outlay in a fee with Kelly. But of course that was gazumped by Chelsea, who just go around gazumping everybody. I mean, how the heck they get away with it? This is going to come home to roost with them eventually, because they get away with it by giving ludicrously long contracts 8 years, 10-year contracts to spread the money across that period. But we are talking about, did you notice that, Steve? There's a 19-year-old boy, Serbian boy, who's been
Yeah.
around, and is he ready for the first team? Well, a lot of people would say no, and he'll go into our under-21 side, etc., etc. But hey, Lewis Miley was ready for the first team at 17. And, we've had Anderson and a few other young boys coming in. So he could perhaps make an impact quite quickly. And he will be costing peanuts in comparison to other players because of his age. And that might be a significant signing. Who do we get rid of? Well, Minter could go and Wilson could go. That's the two obvious ones. Almiron could go. The club accept that. He doesn't. He wants to stay. And yes, his family's settled, etc., etc. But if the club decide he goes and it's made abundantly clear to him that he hasn't got a future and an opportunity comes elsewhere, who knows? Dubravka, I think, will be happy to go. He's at the stage of his career at 35. He's got one more move in him. And with Pope back, he's not going to get anywhere near the first team next season. Maybe Trippier will go, age-wise, 33, coming up 34. He considered going last year, was it Bayern Munich or certainly abroad. His family situation, he may think a move would benefit him. Certainly, his form in 2024 has not been nothing like his form the previous year. And with Livramento already in house, we don't have to buy a replacement. So he could be a distinct possibility. So there's things happening there, but this financial fair play has got to be scrapped. I mean, there's again people that know these things better than me. I've had quite a few on saying it's illegal, in fact, because it's deemed to go against the law of the land. And I think that's where Manchester City are coming from in challenging the Premier League. But in any case, we got it, Steve, for all the good reasons. Let's level out the playing field. Let's stop the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer, make it more competitive. All the right reasons brought in financial fair play. Quite frankly, in practice, that was in theory. In practice, it's been a disaster and has got to be overhauled, if not, kicked into the long grass.
Yeah, I would agree. The other points that Asset Vigilante made. Oh, by the way, the player that you mentioned, who was pictured at the training ground yesterday was Miodrag Pivas, who's a young Serbian defensive midfielder for FK Jedinisto. He's out of contract this summer and allegedly was spotted at Benton and at St James's Park. So it looks as if Newcastle are again turning to youth and potentially bringing this young lad in. Will he stay? Will he go? Who knows? And that's the other question that Asset Vigilante was asking. He was wanting a bit of clarification, I guess, on the Minte situation. It does look like he will be the player out of the door before the 30th of June, John, doesn't it? And I guess it's just a case of where he goes, not if he goes.
Yes, it is. I mean, it shook me and it's sad, and I worry about it because, Chelsea did the same with Mo Salah and De Bruyne, and look how that came home to roost for them. They got, mind you, they weren't allowed to pack their clothes at head office before they were shunted out the door. This guy we've never flipping seen. I think, I don't know if he could find St James's Park. It's quite incredible, really, and he could become a top talent, and we could regret it. But hey ho, that's the way the crazy life is. I mean, the Everton deal was the deal that was going to work it for us. The trouble is when that went down the pan, Steve. The trouble is that Newcastle knew they could do a deal with Leon. Leon were actually willing to pay 40 million, which is heaven sent for Newcastle because that's a sort of inflated fee they need to do this balancing of the books by June the 30th. So that was brilliant. The only thing wrong with that is that Minda doesn't want to go to France. He wants to play in the Premier League if at all possible, which is the reason why he signed for Newcastle, which is the reason why he would have gone to Everton if the whole thing hadn't gone belly up. So, which leaves us maybe at this given moment, unless things are happening that we don't know about, with Brighton, who have shown an interest in Minter, and maybe that will be the outcome. But as Minter's told Newcastle, and he's told them in no uncertain terms, I understand why you have to let me go or want to let me go. I don't want to go, but I will accept that situation. But I won't accept anything you throw upon me. I won't go to a club I don't want to go to, and I don't want to play for Lyon in the French league because it is no better than where he's been with Feyenoord. He wants to go to a top league, which presumably is sort of Italy, Germany, Spain, and England, particularly to England. So, Newcastle have got a problem finding a club that's acceptable to him at the price they want. But that's the one they're driving all the time. They're also looking very strongly at the Callum Wilson situation. They would have to gamble with that, and the gamble would be that you sell Wilson before you've got the replacement. With Calvert-Lewin now out of the door, at least temporarily, so you would have to get rid of Wilson before June the 30th if it wasn't meant to, and then gamble it in the month you've got left, you will buy a centre forward, because we would be well short in that position if we didn't.
Lots of comments coming in, and we'll get to them as we can. Mike Stewart feels Minty could be a gem. He may well be, but you win some, you lose some, and that's just the way the cookie crumbles. And Newcastle have got to abide by the PSR rules, and if that's going to get us out of a predicament at the end of this month, and I guess that's the way it has to be. But we'll wait and see. Ultimately, Minty could go away and be an absolute flop. And Newcastle might have pulled off a master stroke financially. Buying somebody for 6 million and selling them for 40 million is good business when it bails you out of the position you're in. Asset Vigilante's other question was about the acquisition of Kelly, obviously our first signing of this transfer window. He questions the signing because he says that it's no better than what we've already got. I mean, would you agree? I mean, he's a Premiership player. He's a young lad. He's captained the team at Bournemouth. He's got experience. He's come in and he's a left-sided player. He's in essence he's going to be replacing the likes of Lascelles if he plays centre half, because Lascelles is old now. He's a lot older now and is looking at potentially his time at Newcastle coming to end. He's replacing Dummett. Dummett's gone. Jamal Lewis won't play for Newcastle again. So we're in this kind of position where Kelly's come in, and I think it's a decent acquisition, especially for free, John.
Yeah, I think on ability, he's a good signing. And we're getting two players for one. We're getting somebody that can play left-sided centre-half and left-back equally well. Not like Big Dan Burn, who plays left-sided centre-half quite good enough, but not left-back. This guy can play both positions. He's quick. And I've mentioned that before on this podcast, Steve. What is being overlooked by a lot of people is he's quick. And by Jove, that is one thing we haven't got in our back four: pace. This fella will provide pace, whether he covers left back if Hall doesn't make the progress we're expecting. And we've only seen him fleetingly at the end of last season. We're very optimistic, but we don't know for certain. 28 million, when we are juggling all the books, Steve, and talking about cash, that is a huge outlay on young Hall. 28 million, that is big. He's got to justify that. But Kelly can cover left back if Hall's not doing it, or he can cover left-sided centre half while Botman's out and Lascelles is out both till Christmas. I think he's a good signing. I haven't got to worry about him on ability. I do think, with respect to the guy asking the questions, who's got a right to his opinion, I do think he's a step up from what we've got. My concern is his injury problems that he's had in the past. We seem to, are injury-prone players, is it sort of Dyson with death? Do we love fun, or do we love living on the edge. Or, we signed Wilson when he was already a crock. We've signed Kelly with an iffy record, and we've tried to sign Calvert-Lewin with an equally iffy record. I mean, we don't seem to mind whether players have had injury problems or not. We still go and get them. And so my only concern over Kelly is making certain that his poor record injury-wise over the last 2 seasons is now a thing very much of the past, and that he's going to be top draw, because on ability, I think he is top draw.
Okay. Another part of Asset Vigilante's question was, why is there no director of football yet? What do you think is going on, John? Why are Newcastle United being turned down?
It's a very, very good question. And with the limited information that we're allowed to receive, you don't know exactly why that is, because on the surface, it looks a very attractive appointment for someone, because they're coming into a club that's hugely on the up. They're coming into an area that's desperately passionate about their football. They're coming into an area where, if a club that would be, the fans would be so grateful when Newcastle make it, because we've been around failure for so long that this place is ready to explode. So on the surface, it's a perfect setup for the right man. And yeah, we've got turned down by a couple of the guys, mainly the guy from Crystal Palace, who we thought was past the post, Dougie Freeman, and it turned out not to be so. These things take time. They take time because you can't get Newcastle won't announce it until they've actually got somebody. And if they have somebody like Manchester United, think they've got Dan Ashworth, but look how long that's taken to come through. Now, if Newcastle have got a situation like that where they're trying to lever somebody out of a club and the club's not playing ball, unless that club announces that Newcastle are trying to poach that guy and they're going to dig their heels in, we won't know about it. But nothing will happen until that's resolved, and then Newcastle say they've appointed somebody. Moving people out of clubs, as Manchester United have found, when they thought they just could come in and steamroll us and we would turn over and have our belly tickled over Dan Ashworth. And now, when that doesn't happen, now Ratcliffe's up on his hind legs, squealing how we are not playing ball and how we're nasty people and all. What do you expect? Our club sees itself as big as Manchester United, and why shouldn't it? So we aren't just going to fall in with what they want. And I think Newcastle are getting a bit of that in return when they're trying to get the man they want. It's not easy to get people out of a club.
Did we really try to sign Calvert-Lewin, says Ian? He says, I doubt it. Maybe it was just an inquiry.
No, we tried to get him. I mean, I'm not too keen on the idea. I've got to be truthful and nail my colours to the mast. No, he has long been admired by Eddie Howe. Eddie Howe feels in the last season that he's overcome his injury problems, and I think he played 30-odd games of the 38, 32 of the 38, 28 in starters. So he thinks that problem was over. He thinks the ability that made him an England international, and he is terrific, and he thinks he would score goals at Newcastle. He scored limited goals at Everton, but I mean, playing for Everton, dear me, is like putting your thumb in the sausage machine, isn't it? It's painful. So, and he thinks you put him in a Newcastle side that scored all the goals we got last season in 38 games, and where you've got wide players like Gordon and Harvey Barnes and whoever will be on the right, and Murphy and Bruno behind him, etc., that he would score a pile of goals. And of course, he would be linking again with Anthony Gordon, which is something that he did on Merseyside. And let us hope that if he had come, or if they revisit it and he still comes, because that's a possibility, that he is as good a signing from Everton as Gordon turned out to be. I mean, I'm not thrilled. I've got to be truthful. I'm not thrilled, because I think that if we signed Calvert-Lewin, and if we go back and still sign him, we're getting like for like with Wilson. We're swapping an England international centre forward of genuine ability but a horrendous um, fitness record for another one that's exactly the same. So are we better off? We're better off in about 5 years difference because Calvin Lewin's 5 years younger than Wilson. But the same injury problems would apply. I mean, he's got to be wrapped Monday to Friday in cotton wool and given special training, which he often does away from the main group, etc., at the Everton training ground. That's what Wilson does, and that's what he'll do if he comes to Newcastle. But yeah, Howe rates him, and you've got to also bear in mind, Steve, that we can only really push the boat out for a huge signing in terms of price with one, and that guy is going to be the outside right because the outside right will go straight in the team and play regularly. The centre forward will only be cover for Isak. So if you can get a centre forward for 30 million, then that's great because centre forwards cost anything from 60 million to 100 million, don't they? So if you can get one for 30 million that's got Calvert Lewin's pedigree, that looks a good deal because he's not going to be in the team every week. He's only going to be on the bench and come on for Isak and play when Isak's injured. So they were looking to get him in at a good price. All of a sudden, Everton are saying to them, because Everton want them to sign a new contract, Everton are saying to Newcastle, no, we want 37, 40 million from them. We're not going to accept the idea of a 30, 35. And Newcastle saying, hey, wait a minute, you're pushing the boat out. You're thinking we're in difficulty. We're not going to play ball. And we opted out of it for that particular reason that we didn't want to be done. Perhaps Steve, when you think about it, perhaps Everton are looking at Andy Gordon and thinking, look at the sensation that guy's become since he went to Newcastle. Perhaps we let him go a tad cheaply, and we're not going to let them have another one on the cheap with the centre forward so they can pay for him. We've said not on your Nelly, and we've gone away. We hope, or Eddie Howe hopes, that the centre forward will cause mischief behind the scenes and say, I want away and I will certainly won't sign for you, blah, 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 and that something might still become of it. I'm apprehensive. I mean, I don't think he's the greatest sign we're going to get, but I can understand why the manager's doing it because he rates him and because he can get him relatively cheap for what a centre forward is. And the centre forward we get's got to be relatively cheap because the big money's got to be spent on an outside right because he will be a regular first teamer, the outside right.
Okay, halfway through the show, we'll have a quick ad break and we will be back after this.
A big thanks to all our sponsors, Skips and Bins. You can find their website at skipsandbins.com. Contact us, www.skipsandbins.com/contact. Say hello to low-cost waste disposal with pay-as-you-go and contract waste management. A big thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. Their website, mrvickies.co.uk. Email info@mrvickies.co.uk. Telephone 01768 210 102. Thanks to United Group Travel. They are the Travel and Tourism Award winners in 2024. Their website, www.unitedgrouptravel.com. Email beverly.ugtl@gmail.com or telephone 01670 632 460 or mobile 0791 666 4174. Just £30 per person deposit. There are no strangers on our tours, just friends you haven't met yet. A big thanks to Media Arts. You can find them at www.media-arts.co.uk. And don't forget, we are a podcast. You can find us on iTunes or Spotify or other podcast providers. If you want to help the channel grow, then hit the like button, the little thumb underneath the video, click share and share to your social media, or join the channel for as little as $1.99 a month. If you want to take out a one-off payment membership, go to nufcmatters.com and hit membership. And for a £25 fee, you get a scarf, a cup, a pen, and a membership card. You can also put a smartphone over the top of this QR code. It'll take you straight there. And don't forget, we also help the food bank on this channel. nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk is a website where you can make a virtual donation today.
And don't forget the end of season do, featuring Gibbo and Malcolm on stage with George and the Long Sands in aid of Dementia Matters. There's lots of people going there from the charity as well. Tickets, nufcmatters.com, newcastlelegends.com, price of a tenner, and all proceeds going to the charity. Going to be a cracking day. And Gibbo is at the Leisure Centre on the 2nd of August with Rob Lee. Tickets for that event are priced at £30, and you can get them from gatesheadleisurecentre.co.uk. Get yourself onto the website and order your tickets for that one. And just want to plug this one as well. There's going to be an exclusive dinner with Martin Johnson, and Danny Mitchell is running that event. If you want tickets for that, it's Friday the 12th of July. It's 3-course meal and coffee. Starts at 7 o'clock. 07817 412-524 is Danny's number, and the proceeds from that event are going to Dean Fox MND Foundation. Okay, let's get back to the last question from Asset Vigilante, who sent this to me on X. Why is Callum Wilson out of favour at Newcastle? Has he fell out with Howe, or is it something else, John?
No, I don't think he's fallen out with Eddie. In fact, Eddie is a big supporter of him. I think for a start, they boarded Newcastle, which is the Saudis, but Amanda and her husband running the thing with the Rubens over here, have looked at the situation and said, look, Eddie, you've got to understand financial fair play is a whole different ballgame. And they've explained to Eddie, who's a clever boy and obviously wants the best for the club because that's the best for himself as well. They've explained why Minter has got to go, and they've explained why at least one of the big hitters in terms of wages, first teamer, has got to go. And, you know, Wilson and Almiron are the first two in that. Dubrovka's not going to save too much. Trippier's a different ballgame, but Wilson and Almiron's got to go. And Wilson is the easier sell because he's a centre forward. You might get more money for a centre forward than you would for Almiron. And they've said, look at his record on availability, etc. Look at his age. We're not going to be able to cash in on him much after this year, so I'm afraid that he's got to be part of the sacrificial lamb. And of course, if Eddie sort of said, well, I would love to keep him, there's a perfect answer, Steve. Right, you want to keep him? Well, that means we'll have to sell either Isak or Gordon or Bruno, in which case you'd very quickly sell Callum Wilson, wouldn't you?
It's a funny one, isn't it? You know, this transfer window has got a hell of a lot of interesting twists and turns, I think. Yeah, I'll take another question. Stephen Kennedy, thanks for your question as a vigilante. Some great questions there, and thanks for tweeting us. If you want to do that, by the way, send it to me on X at Steve Wraith. Stephen Kennedy, question for John. Before you discuss transfer rumours, sorry, mate, I had to get the transfer rumours in first. Who would be your ideal pick for goal scorer, right wing, centre-back and goalkeeper to keep us in contention for the top 4 next season?
Right, good. But off the top of the head,
it's a difficult one. Is there any? I mean, I guess let's start at the club. I mean, for me, John, and I don't mind jumping in on this one with you, Alexander Isak is my goal scorer for next season.
Oh, without a shadow of doubt. There's no question about that. He is what we're all about. I mean, you know, the 3 key players next season is going to be Isak, Anthony Gordon, who made double figures in goals, plus assists, plus how he looks after Isak, and Bruno pushing on from midfield. They're going to be the 3. When we were mentioning, or I was mentioning early on, what Al wants to sign this season, I almost forgot or did forget to mention goalkeeper, simply because that is in reality already nailed on and already done as Trafford. James Trafford will be the goalkeeper. They are having to, I mean, he has already made up his mind that he's coming to Newcastle and is happy and delighted to come to Newcastle. He would sit behind Pope as chief support and eventual rival for the first team spot. They've still got to manage the deal with Burnley, but Trafford sitting there, he's going nowhere else. We will get round the situation with Burnley. It is within the price range Newcastle are willing to pay, so the goalkeeper's taken care of. The centre half and the right winger is what's interesting. And the centre forward, because where do you go and get a centre forward in the sort of £30 million bracket? You've got to go for a 19 or 20-year-old, or for the more experienced guy like Calvert-Lewin, who's got something that's holding him back, and that is his fitness record. Because you're not going to get anybody in that price range that's an Isak, for example, are you? You know, it's going to be a Wilson or a Calvert-Lewin or a 21-year-old kid. So the difficulty is going to be exactly that. Right wing, it's very important because they've obviously decided that Almiron, and Eddie had decided before the end of last season that Almiron, good lad, there were years, etc., is not the answer. I think it's already been decided that Murphy is not going to start 38 games or even 30 games, but that he's a terrific bench player because you've got to have
subs. Yeah,
and you've got to have subs, as you well know. Yes, you can play Gordon right wing and Harvey Barnes left wing, and a lot of supporters would do that if we don't get a quality right winger in, because how do you get both of them in the team otherwise? But we will sign an outside right. We've almost got to. That's the number one target of Howe, I think, simply because the outside right will be a regular first teamer. The centre forward won't be.
Okay, interesting stuff as always from John. You've got about 25 minutes left if you want to get any questions in. And John Ball, good morning, mate. I hope you're well. He's got a question in. He says, who would be your midfield three for next season? Easy for me. Easy for me. I'm going to go Bruno, Joe Linton, and Tonali. He's got to find a way of playing the three of them together.
Yeah. Yes. First of all, I think everybody accepts, Steve, that the two Brazilian boys are going to be nailed on. Joe Linton signed his new long-term contract. He's got over his injury. Bruno is as hot as they can come. He's got 100 million on him to safeguard him. So they definitely start. At the beginning of the season, if everybody's fit, the first day against Southampton, I think I would play Willock as the third one because we can't play Tonali because he can't start the season. But at £52 million, Tonali is going to be the third one, isn't he? Long term next season, because you haven't spent 52 million to have him sit on the subs bench, so it's going to be Tonali. It's then how you fiddle them because they're fluid. Yes, Bruno and Tonali are fluid. Joe Linton's Joe Linton. He's the powerhouse. He's left-sided. He drives on. We know what we get there. But it's exactly how you would put Tonali and Bruno in tandem. Which one would sit and which one would go. Because they both have it in them to be a sitter and they both have it in them to be an attacker. What Eddie's got to decide is who's got the best discipline to be the sitter, because the discipline comes, Steve, in sitting. You've got to be able to, the sitter's got to be disciplined to keep his shape and keep his position. That's discipline. The attacker just goes and attacks. So it's which does which. But you're right, they're going to be the three next season. To start with, it will not be Tonali, obviously. So who will it be then? Well, I would probably go with Willock then. But long term, it's going to be Tonali. it's fascinating to know how he'll handle Tonali and Bruno.
Yeah, interesting stuff. Good question. That Mama Dashvili looked good for Georgia last night, says Alan. Of course, that's the keeper we've been linked with, John. I do feel he's going to be out of our price range, sadly, but he does look a good keeper.
Well, he's the one I wanted because, again, we're talking in an ideal world, Stephen. Unfortunately, it's not an ideal world, and that's why I'm so infuriated by financial fair play and think it is very unfair. It's financial unfair play because you're not allowed to do. I mean, how I used to like the simple old days, Steve, when in the transfer market was only a matter of could you afford him and were you willing to back your own judgment. And if you could afford him and would back your own judgment, it's still a gamble, but you could take it. Now you can't take it. I think the Georgia goalkeeper would be much better for us than the guy Trafford who's coming. Why? Because the Georgian goalkeeper would have is so much vastly more experienced. He's had a couple of good seasons in La Liga behind him. He is a superstar in his national side, and he would put the pressure on Pope from the very first day. He put the pressure on Pope from against Southampton, and every player reacts better when under pressure, when challenged by somebody else wanting his place. We know on the opening day, Trafford's not going to challenge Pope for the jersey. It's going to be Pope's. And Trafford will challenge him a season down the line in the way Livramento and Hall are now. He's not going to do it straight away. I would have preferred the Georgian fella, but we can't afford to pay top dollar for a goalkeeper, an outside right, a centre forward, and a centre half because we're not allowed to do that. So we've compromised with Trafford. We'll come. That's why we wanted Tussin because there's a free transfer. What a help that was, and that's why we're looking with a centre forward with all the restrictions, which made it boil down to Calvert-Lewin appearing to Eddie Howe to be a very good choice. That's scuppered. Maybe it's not scuppered. It's scuppered for the moment. But maybe it's not scuppered. They'll get a bit embittered if we try to go back. Us having then sold Minter to somebody else, they'll be well chuffed with us. So it'll be interesting to see what can be done.
Let's depress ourselves a little bit, John, by talking about England. Alan says,
I was enjoying the show. I was enjoying the show, mate. Now you spoiled it. Go on.
How do you think England will do in the Euros? We've got an easier draw, but we said that against Iceland 8 years ago. I mean, look, he's finished top of the group. He's through to the knockout stages. He's got a favoured draw in essence, I guess. But, at this moment in time, this is either Gareth Southgate writing a resignation letter or he's pulling off one of the greatest comebacks since Frank Sinatra. It's one of those that you're looking at thinking, is he suddenly going to unleash all of the talent and play them in the right positions against Slovenia on Sunday at 5:00?
He better if he wants to have any chance whatsoever, because quite frankly, I've had greater fun watching paint dry on the fence outside than I have watching England under Southgate. I mean, it has been dreadful. It has been awful. And they're almost trying to give us an appearance in the final, Steve, to get Slovakia in the last 16. Martin Dubravka, bless him. I mean, that is as good a draw as you can get. And the way is open right away through to the final, because in the quarters, on the other side of the draw, you're liable to get Germany, France, Spain, Portugal playing each other in the quarters. The big hitters on the other side of the draw. We ought to make the final. But if you've watched Newcastle, if you've watched England, on the sort of group draw which Newcastle never got in the Champions League, we got the group of death. This has been so easy that we only managed 2 draws and beaten the other side 1-0. I mean, we've been awful. And the bottom line is the draws opened up and give hope to Southgate and to the players. Must have given huge hope. But and of course we'll beat Slovakia. I believe we will beat Slovakia, but will we then beat Austria or Italy or whoever comes in the quarter and in the semis? I will ask one question to any supporter that suddenly thinks we've got a real chance now. Will England win the Euros this year? And if your answer is no, then Southgate will voluntarily fall on his sword at the end of the tournament and England will be looking for a new manager. And by the way, when they are, they needn't bother looking up here because Eddie Howe's otherwise engaged. They can forget that one for a start. But I honestly believe, I mean, it has been purgatory. The team selection has been so cautious. We've had one change to the starting 11 in 3 games. And we haven't even got out the block, Steve. In 3 games, we had one change to the starting 11, and that was Gallagher coming in on the last game. And that was such a success. He was hooked at half time. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, Eddie Howe made Anthony Gordon into a superstar last season. Southgate, in 3 weeks, has made him Howard Hughes. We haven't seen him. I mean, we haven't. It was an absolute insult to put him on for 1 minute of the last game in the group and expect him to change things. 89th minute, Howard Hughes is allowed to come out of his rabbit hutch and is stuck on the field. What did he expect him to do in that 1 minute plus the minute and a half of extra time there was? I mean, not to start Anthony Gordon. You look at our left side, England's left side. I mean, Foden is a top player, but he's a number 10. He's not a left winger, so he's not going to go beyond the fullback and stretch play. Now, can you, and as well as Kieran Trippier has done at left back, and he has done well, he is still a right back. He will still come in on his good foot, his strongest foot, his right foot, and narrow the pitch. Can you tell me how the England manager, in a squad that was increased to 26, because it was increased for this tournament, the numbers, in a squad of 26, he picked one left-footed left back, Luke Shaw, and he hasn't played since February. So, I mean, how on earth does he do that? How on earth do you have vibrant young talent like Palmer and Gordon and then keep them locked up in the dugout? I mean, it really is. I mean, Gareth is getting what he deserves, unfortunately. I hate to see things turn, it's all anywhere near vicious, and it's sad to see cups thrown at him when he went over at the end of the last game to applaud the fans. That is not nice because he is a decent man. But as a manager, he's not just belt and braces. I mean, he wears a woolly hat in the middle of the summer. He wears a woolly cardigan and he has an umbrella in case it rains. I mean, he is so cautious that it's absolutely untrue. I mean, he has got the best attacking talent that's available to any manager, and he hasn't had to buy them. I mean, Eddie Howe's got attacking talent like Isak and like Gordon and like Harvey Barnes and like Bruno because he's gone out and bought them. If you're manager of England, you don't have to buy them, you inherit them. If they're born in England, you've got them. So he's got Kane and he's got Saka and he's got Foden and he's got Palmer and he's got Gordon and he's got Watkins and he's got Tony. He's got all those. But what's he do with them? He wastes them. I mean, can you recognise any of the players I've just mentioned playing for England? I can't recognise.
No, none of them.
No, I can't recognise Foden from Man City. I can't recognise Bellingham outside of the first game from Real Madrid. I can't recognise Kane from Bayern Munich. They're just not playing to their strengths. And we're so cautious. We go 1-0 up in the first game and the second game, and it's like now we'll take the foot off the accelerator. What we've got will hold. Why, with all the attacking players you've got, go out and get the second goal and kill the game? I mean, yes, we should beat Slovakia on penalties. We should beat Slovakia, But then when we play the first good side, and I mean,
Italy or Spain, maybe he's in the next round.
Gareth is lending, he is opening it up, isn't he, to the fact that unless England win the tournament, he will quit. He will quit. He sort of said the crowd don't want me anymore. It's pointless trying to change their opinion, etc., etc. He said before the tournament started that unless he won it, it could be his last chance. It could be time to go. And I'm afraid, bless him, that instead of that, producing a front foot approach to which is the best way for England to play with what's available to them, it's produced caution. I mean, can you imagine Gareth Southgate as the manager of Newcastle? The fans would love him, wouldn't they? I mean, they drove Jack Charlton out of town after 1 year because he didn't play attractive football. I mean, can you imagine that we scored 78 goals or something last season in 38 games? Can you imagine him being manager if the side we've got? I mean, he would have Isak playing outside left and Gordon playing defensive midfield and Bruno dropping into the back four, and he just wouldn't cut the mustard with Newcastle fans. Manchester United might be a bit thrilled they didn't wait for him till after Euro to make him their manager, and the reason they didn't is they thought he might win the tournament with England and therefore be a national hero and stay. So they decided we can't risk that. So they ended up keeping Ten Hag, but they could have got even more unlucky then and got Gareth, couldn't they? I mean, bless him. I don't think he's perfect for England. He's been perfect for the FA until now because he's politically correct and he'll organise things and there's a calmness and he doesn't have to manage day to day in the spotlight like a club manager. He's got to manage every few months in the spotlight. I mean, I wish him all the best because he's the manager of England. I want England to win the Euros, but I tell you what, they won't, even with the score they've got.
What do you make of John's question? He said, what do you think the Ian Wright suggestion to solving the left-back problem by playing Saka there after he was originally playing there for Arsenal when he first came on the scene?
Well, why I'm just laughing because I can imagine Gareth doing that. I mean,
you probably can, to be honest. Big fed up front.
I can follow the theory of it, but that's the trouble. Theory and practice is two different things. I'll tell you something about Saka. He's a wonderful player, isn't he? You saw him with Arsenal, but I'll tell you something right now, mate. He ain't fit. He isn't physically fit. He's had an injury. That's what's wrong with him. I mean, he's a better player than he's played outside. Outside right for Newcastle, he's been a pale imitation of what he really is. He is not physically fit after injuries. So, and that's true. So, for me, I would go on Sunday, Steve, and I would have Palmer outside right and Gordon outside left because Saka's not fit. So, why play him left back when he's not fit? Because he isn't fit. And by the way, what are they waiting for with Luke Shaw? When he is fit to get on the pitch, he'll not be fit to start and play 90 minutes. He'll get off the bench on Sunday for about 5 minutes. And by the time he's physically fit, we'll be back home or the final will be over. And England will have played in the final. I mean, he hasn't played since February, for goodness sake. What are you going to get out of Luke Shaw? And they haven't got another left back. Can you understand that? Team selection, the squad selection, I mean, not the team selection, the squad selection. Absolutely incredible.
He's taken too many number 10s. I was speaking to somebody this morning. He said he's taken about 5 number 10s. Even Eze plays number 10 for Crystal Palace. He's Cole Palmer plays number 10 for Chelsea. All of these 10s he's taken.
And Foden's best player.
Foden's a 10. Yeah,
Belgium's a 10. Everybody's a 10. He hasn't taken a number 3, right? Apart from the bloke, Luke Shaw, who goes around with a tea trolley Monday to Friday in training, collecting the pots after they've had a cup of tea. I mean, it's we could go on and on. We could go on and on.
They haven't taken enough players in certain positions. It's as simple as that, and that's what's going to be the downfall. And Alan, you're right. He says we've got a team of Harlem Globetrotters playing like Sunderland. He says it's South Africa all over again. Gerrard, Lampard, Scholes. It was a nightmare. It's funny, somebody else mentioned that to me this morning. The last time we played as bad as this was in the early noughties. And it was that era, and you're right, 100%. Benny says, didn't see Foden or Saka trying to beat the fullback even once the other day. Foden just ran inside. Gordon tried it straight away, out of play, fair enough. Palmer did it again and again. And there's no doubt about it. Yeah, Conor Gallagher came on. I don't think he managed to hit one pass, in his stats. Yet Mainu came on. I'm not a huge Mainu fan. Yeah, he's a talented kid, but I don't think he's the greatest player we've ever seen. But at least with Mainu's stats compared to Gallagher, again, he was pass accuracy was 100%. Everything was 100%. So it's a crying shame, because really, with the players that we've got, England should have been competing to win this trophy, 100%. Disappointing, we're not going to win it. We're not going to win it.
No, that's the bottom line. When I've said, we've got a good draw, we've got Slovakia, we've got all the big hitters in the other part of the group. That's all wonderful. The only Achilles heel is that we're rubbish. That's the Achilles heel. We are playing rubbish. Now, is he going to get it right between now and Sunday? The only hope he's got is to suddenly start playing Palmer and Gordon from the start and see if that improves it, because it ain't going to get any worse. It ain't going to get any better keeping the same team. It isn't going to get any better. And I think it's too late in the tournament to do something about it now. And the mood in the camp is depression. I mean, blimey, being around Gareth at the moment must be like, it must be like a wet blanket, because
it plays a huge part. Confidence plays a huge part, John. You're right, and this isn't a league season of 38 games. He's got to get it right in the knockout stages, and unfortunately, you're right. He's not enthusiastic. He looks down. He looks, he's coming out with crazy things like, we haven't been able to replace Calvin Phillips. I mean, just unbelievable. And I mean, I listen, Ian. I know Greece won it, and I know you think we can win it. And listen, yeah, of course we can. We're still in it, but the odds are vastly against us. I would say. I want to finish with these two questions because they're both fairly similar. We've only got 3 minutes left. Ian said, lads, what exactly is the amount we need to balance the books with PSR rules before the end of June? I've heard anything from 6 million to 50 million. I've heard 30 million, Ian. That's what I've heard. So, I guess the only people who know is the accountants, John.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I've heard 30 million as well, but people are estimating. The only people that know are the Newcastle accountants, and they're surely, forgive me, they're not going to tell. And because somehow they want to be able to come out the other end, whichever way the books have been massaged, and Newcastle to be on the right side. Now, the reason why you would say, evidently, Minter's fee, which would be between 30 and 40 million, and Newcastle are going for the higher end of that, 40 million, Minter's fee would cover it. If we sell Minter, we are okay. If we don't, we've got a shortfall. So really, his figure, which is why they're pushing to sell him, because that fee would put us on the right side by Sunday. So that's the simple answer to the whole situation. But isn't it a nonsense? Is it? You know what? What have we been seeing, Steve? We've been seeing clubs like Aston Villa and whatever. They're selling academy players between each other.
Yeah.
You sell us one of your academy players and I'll sell you one of ours. And those figures will massage and we're both on the right side of the law. I mean, it is an absolute absurdity, and we're having to live by these rules. And it is an absolute nonsense. And the quicker they go out the window, the better.
Ian, if Mint is worth 40 million at 19, wouldn't we be better off keeping him? It depends, Ian. He's had one good season, one half decent season abroad. He looked a good player. Yeah, he's won a trophy, and well done to the lad. But is he that good? We don't know. Is he capable of playing in the Premier League? It's a different style of football. So many questions about Minty, and if it's one player that's going to be able to generate that little bit of money that we need before the 30th, then it's a good idea. Steve, I didn't forget your question, but nobody really knows the news on shirt sales, but it looks very positive, put it that way. The stats, I'm sure, will come out in due course, but I think the fact that Newcastle as well are having a retro strip brought out next year tells you where Adidas are at. They're already very happy with the way things are going, and it's just the start really of such a wonderful relationship. The clock has beaten us. That's been a great show. GIBBO will have a week off again next week. We're going to reunite the guys in a couple of weeks' time, though. I know a lot of you like to see the lads together, so Supermac will be back on next Thursday, but we do like to give the lads a little bit of time off in the summer. John, as always, absolute pleasure, mate. Have a nice night. I know you're seeing the grandkid tonight, so have a good night tonight, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks' time, mate.
Take care. Thanks a lot, boys.